Well, let's bring on Kevin. Kevin Sommerbang, are you there, buddy?
Yep, I'm here.
Well, everybody, I want to introduce my good friend and our associate, Kevin. Like I said, Kevin runs a business called Kinetic Slides, and he is a expert, a ninja at basically creating phenomenal presentations. And Kevin, I took a couple of the before and after you probably recognize here
Uh-huh.
from your website. But why don't you get started by maybe sharing with people that are here in our audience some of the common things that you see people make that are big rookie mistakes? And then, of course, what you do in the work you do and how you got started basically as an illustrator working in this very niche business of helping people with their pitch decks.
Sure. My pleasure. Thanks once again for having me here, Brad.
You
And it's
bet.
awesome to be able to be on this platform and share my expertise with Dolly, with Alan, Victor, Joshua, and the rest of the team. So to start with, I just want to share how I stumbled upon this industry, right? I'm a graduate of industrial engineering, a good lucrative job, you can say. Been working on the supply chain industry for 5 years, and I realized that it's really my passion and desire in the long run to run a design agency. So I started hopping online and met a guy named Dan Hanford.
Yep,
So
you're good.
Joshua, uh, I suggest that you Google Dan Hanford in passiveinvesting.com because he just 10x his business last year. So he introduced me to multifamily investing, and from that, I started to realize that hey, there's a big gap in the design industry, specifically to pitch decks. So that's where I niched out, right? So much for that. I wanted to share with you my screen and these. Um, can you guys see my screen? I'm showing this slide. If I come up here, don't talk just yet, but show you this slide. What would you think of me, right? What if I come up here, don't talk just yet, but show you this slide? Did your feelings just suddenly change towards me? I bet it did, right? I mean, take a look at the difference. An old-fashioned, boring slide compared to this one. But just because I say rookie capital raisers in the title doesn't mean that only the rookie capital raisers do these mistakes. No, right? In fact, even those with experience in syndication or pitches still commit some of these mistakes. But even if you're a beginner or you have lots of experience in this field in capital raising or pitch presentations, you can still be perceived as a rookie by how you present yourself, how you show things to your audience. So that's the essence of this presentation or this, how do I say, lecture, lecture. So what exactly are these mistakes? To answer that, we have to know what the investors are looking for during the pitch. And I call them the three elements of a winning pitch. So we have content, visual, and delivery, right? So let's go ahead and get started with the content. So the big difference between a rookie and a pro is that rookies, they bore the audience with data and facts, right? Whereas the pro capital raisers, they tell a story using the data and facts. So by now, you've probably heard the saying that facts tell, but stories sell, right? Storytelling is a very powerful marketing technique that can be very useful or helpful when it comes to writing a pitch deck. I mean, I cannot say, I cannot add enough information about what Brad said in terms of how important pitch decks are. But 92% of consumers wants brands or investors even wants brand to make ads that feel like a story. So when you turn on even Spotify, right, there's a story. You can just hear it, but there's a story behind it, right? But in the same research, it was noted that messages delivered as stories are up to 22 times more memorable than just facts. Think about that, right? So the question now is, how do you structure your content to come up with a compelling story? That's what we want to know now, right? So here are three proven formats that you can use as we go along. You will have an idea which format works best for your capital raising journey. All right. So the first format, I call these the hero's journey. it talks about your biggest why, right? So this is a tale of why you decided to launch your startup in the first place, right? So on this first box, you can say that our hero is living a normal life, and then he encounters a problem, and he sets out to build a solution, and then he finds a purpose and dedicates himself to solving that problem. It's personal. It explains where you have come from and what is motivating you. Just like what I said, it's your biggest why, right? Now, this is best for innovative concept pitches, new products, and charities, right? It is best for these concepts or these applications because it creates a bond between you and your audience. It highlights your experience and showcase your passion for the project. So that's the hero's journey. I think it's straightforward, right? And the next format is kind of similar to this one, but just in the perspective of your customer. So it starts off with you introducing someone with a problem, and then describe his everyday life, and then explains how he discovered your product and how it solves the issue. And then transition into showing your investors the difference the product has made to your customer, right? So it's also another excellent choice for concept decks for innovative concepts for consumer goods and for tech startups. And I'm going to show you some of the decks, the before and after. Brad already showed you some, right? But I'm going to show you some of the recent ones that we've worked on, and you're going to realize that, hey, this is customer's tale, this is hero's tale, and stuff like that. But the last one, the last format is, I call these the industry's point of view. So I think this is more suited for the real estate guy. So Joshua, this might be your thing, right? So first off, you're gonna state the current. You're gonna talk about the current state of the industry or your market, and then also talk about the changes, right? The disruptions, technological, economical, and social, right? COVID, stuff like that. So what causes these problems, and then talk about the opportunity that this problem creates, and finally you talk about why investing in this venture or solving this problem now, not tomorrow, but now is the perfect time. It's best for data pitches and groundbreaking startups. It demonstrates your competitive edge. It talks about how your business will fit into a wider industry and the size of your potential customer base. So those are the three basic formats of pitch decks. But I think even if you have an idea of what format you're going to use, you're still, not sure of what the content is. So let me discuss that with you. So there's the basic content formula for any startup. Well, the majority of tech startups use this, but a lot of other concepts or innovations can also use this. So these are the common sequence of the pitch decks that we normally do at Kinetic Slide. So the cover, a problem, tension, solution, business model. You can actually literally just Google this one, but yeah, these are the common stuff. And if you ask me about the length of an effective pitch deck, it's somewhere between 12 to 15 slides. The best way to identify what exactly is the content that you will be putting on your pitch deck is to think as an investor, right? By getting inside the minds and thinking like an investor, you'll be able to write your own story in a way that addresses their immediate concerns and overcomes potential objections. So a solid content is a result of good research and planning. Sometimes our clients, they come up to us and they don't have any idea of what to put in their slides, and we give them some pointers. Here, start with this one and then this one. Some of them needs 3 days to do research and planning. When you're done with the initial research and planning, it's time to create the outline and structure for your deck. So most of the pitch decks are between 10 to 15, 12 to 15, right? So you've got to be mindful of how you present the information. For tech startups, innovation, consumer goods, this is the typical structure of pitch decks I just showed you. Josh's question talks about real estate. I think you guys are also familiar, I'm not sure, with multifamily and single family storage. Brad talks about that, right? But I highly recommend when when you don't have idea in terms of what to put on your pitch deck, I highly recommend buying these. It's a very cheap ebook from Joe Farrell, right? It's called The Best Ever Syndication Apartment Syndication Book. I also learned a lot from this one. And just to show you, these are the content that is proven effective in his company presentation. He calls it company presentation. But at Kinetic Slides, that's my agency, design agency. We've been known as experts in creating $1 million pitch decks for real estate syndicators, whether that's single family, apartment, storage, mobile homes. And thanks really to this big guy, Joe Fairless, who owns a really huge syndication LLC, which runs thousands of units now. All right. So that's it for the content. Now let's dive in and see some of the before and after of our work in terms of visual. So there are three essentials of a stunning $1 million pitch decks, and from these three elements, we can name a lot of tips like those do's and don'ts, right? So the first one is visual branding consistency. Now, what does that mean? So when we say visual, it's how you look, right? Whether that's online or offline. When I go to your website, the feel of your website should also be seen in your slide or even on your social media. Take for instance, Brad, right? When you go to his website, you see that the majority of the colors that he uses black and white, right? So when you go to social media, you can also notice that it's a black and white, not any other color, right? So that's what we call visual branding consistency.
Yeah,
Next one is
let me add something there, because this is an important thing that Kevin is mentioning, guys. I can't tell you how many times I've consulted entrepreneurs, and I've met them at an event. They give me their business card, we connect, and then they follow up with me and they say, "Hey, can I send you my pitch deck?" Sure. And then I get their pitch deck and I'm like, "Well, why is your pitch deck like red, purple, and green, and your business card is white, gray, and black?" And so here's a message that's very important that Kevin is basically communicating. The biggest, best companies in the world have what they call their color palette. Okay. Think of it, it's a color palette. So that way, when they hire an advertising agency, one of the things that who's ever in charge will tell that head person at the agency, "We're going to email you our color palette. Everything you do has to be within this palette." Okay. Every color has to be within this palette. Now, the palette may have 5, may have 10, may have 14 colors. It may have less, but everything you do has to use one of these colors. Why is that so important? It's like Kevin said, it's brand. Your website, your pitch deck, your business card, your one pager should all have a consistency to it, so that when somebody sees it, they immediately know, "Oh, that's Dolly's company. I recognize this because I saw that." Or, I saw this and it is uniform. What that's going to do is provide uniformity. More importantly, branding, which is so key in any business. And so when you're thinking about your business, especially when it comes to raising money, I want you all to think about what I call the royal colors. When you see kings and queens, there are certain colors of royalty: deep purple, red, blues, green obviously is the color of money. And so think about some of these colors as it relates to your brand. But here's a very important message, and this is a true story. I raised about $200 million for what's probably the 6th or 7th largest owner operator of self-storage in the US and Canada, a company called SmartStop. Many of you, may see their properties in your local communities. And I'm really good friends with their CEO, Michael Schwartz. Michael built a portfolio of self-storage properties. And the amount of money that the actual properties were valued at was probably about 400, maybe $450 million. And he wanted to sell it as a portfolio, not sell each property, but just sell the whole portfolio. So he called a business broker and he was basically offered an audience with CubeSmart. which is, I think, the second, maybe third largest operator of storage in the United States. There's Public Storage, there's Extra Space, there's CubeSmart. So they flew up to their meeting. They sat down in this big boardroom, and the founder, CEO of CubeSmart, the head dude, said, Michael, we love what you've done. You got a great portfolio, great properties. We'd like to give you $900 million cash. And Michael said, man, thank you so much. Let me do this. Let me go back and talk to my team and sleep on it. I don't want to make a hasty decision. I really appreciate you. And so he went back to his office and he sat there and he said, is that the best I can do? And he did some research and he Googled Apple, Amazon, Nike. And he said, you know what? I want to continue looking at offers. And about 3 weeks later, he got an audience with Extra Space, another big, huge storage operator. Flew up there, met with their team, and they said, Michael, we love what you do. Great properties, great footprint. We love that you've branded all your properties where every door on every storage unit is blue. You know, we're green and Public Storage is orange, and they got the lighthouse. Everybody across the whole country knows when they drive by a SmartStop property, they're going to see the blue doors in your logo. We'll give you 1.3 billion. He's like, let me ask you a question. I won't tell you who, but a few weeks ago, I was offered 900 million. Why would you offer me 1.3 billion? And they said, it's an easy answer. It's because the brand is worth more than the real estate. Now, that's an important message, folks. I was very good friends with a guy by the name of John Williams before he passed away. He was the owner of the largest multifamily operator in the United States, a company called Post Properties. John was a great brander. Every property that he owned, when you drove up, you knew it was a Post property. Why? Because it was like Extra Space, that every door on the storage units are green, or Public Storage, it's all orange. Every time you walked up to your door to your apartment, there was a nice little brass plate above the doorbell that said, welcome home, Post Properties. And a lot of the things they did were related to branding. So as you're building your real estate business, think about how you can brand it so that you become recognized within your community. Sorry to interrupt, but I'll get back to you.
No, it's fine. I can't say enough about visual branding, about branding as a whole, right? Visual branding is another topic. And I think it's in psychology, it helps a lot to, incite the feeling that you want your audience or investors to feel. Like, for instance, if I just show you this mug right here, I'm not sure if you see it, you notice that it's the same colors that I use for this presentation. Or even if you go to my website, Kinetic Slides, it's the same colors, right? So that's how visual branding works. Next one is the communication design. It talks about what needs to be seen first by your audience. It's the hierarchy, right? So when you show something, what do you want the audience to focus on, right? And the last one would be simplicity. So let's go ahead and show some examples of the slides that we transformed or slides that we worked on. So visual branding consistency, consistency with the website. So this is the website of Boardwalk Wealth, right? And this is a slide that we created for them. So you can see that we use the same image. It's the decision of the client, but notice how we use the same colors and fonts, right? There can be some elements that can change, but the major look and feel of your slide should be consistent with the other collaterals or your websites and social media and stuff like that, right? Especially the colors. Other example is from MMG. Notice that in this case, the shapes used in the website, the rectangular shapes with a bit of transparency is also present in this one, in this slide, right? So a bit of a design geeky thing, right? These are things that we daily worked on with my design team. So the next one is the communication design. Here's an example of a transformation. This one is for a tech startup, right? So we can, you notice that there's a lot of things going on the before slide. And what we did is to visualize it in a way that we're using We're avoiding bullets, but we're using icons and keeping the phrases short, so you can just see the difference, right? And a kinetic slides, or even you go to other slide agency, they don't use this old-fashioned stock photos. It's just so cheesy. It's not professional, right? It's 1900s, right? So another example is bombarding your audience with a lot of graphics and a lot of data. It's just not helpful. They don't want to look at it. They just wanted to listen. And if they don't like what they're hearing, they would just not listen at all, right? So what we did here is to declutter it, to keep it simple. So notice that here, there's a picture of war tank and some logos to visualize the experience of the speaker in the army. Okay, right? That's a good part of his storytelling, but we don't encourage him to visually put or visually tell about the army experience, but his audience can still listen to the speaker's experience in the army, but it doesn't have to be visible on the slide, right? So take a look at it. It's just simple, straightforward. What the audience needs to see is what you should be showing to them. This one, same, the digital visor. You notice that it's difficult to read and it's very long, right? The title is very long. So with our work, we made it simple and modern, short and legible. You can easily read it, right? Another thing is the inconsistency in structuring the sentences. You can see that there are 3 keywords in this slide. It's systems, values, and scale. But notice that the word scale is part of the question in the 3rd bullet. So what we did to make it consistent is that we put it in the same place. We structured, or we changed the language of the 3rd sentence to get rid of the scale in the question and put it here. So, again, geeky stuff that I'm sure you guys don't normally notice when you create these decks, right? So another one, I showed you these before, right? So this is the one that I showed you earlier. It's the hero's journey. And I want to talk about hierarchy, right? There's one of the things that I talk about with my team is that we avoid this kind of design. Why? Because it's not number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 that's important. It's the content, which is this one. So if I were to redesign it, I would make it look like this, right? So notice that I put more emphasis on what's important rather than the numbers. All right. In terms of hierarchy too, you can also apply it using images. So you can see that in the before image, it's you don't know where to look at. Like, where is the property here, right? Whereas when you're using a focused transparency, right? You notice that, hey, this is the property that they are offering. Straightforward. Next one is the usage of images. It's still under communication design, right? The big question is when to use an image, when not to use an image. So basically, when you look at this, it's a boring one. Definitely needs to increase the aesthetics. So we used icons and at the same time, an image. Another thing is a client worked with us. He just gave us this ugly slide, very boring, and then we transform it to something that looks like his website with an image. Okay, but not all the time that we encourage you to use images. I'm going to show you a slide that I think should not use an image. So this one is a recent deck that we made. Okay, so this slide talks about the problem, right? And literally, what the client wants is to put a problematic man behind. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. But the question is, does it add value to the slide? Right? Does it even add value? Yes, it's connected to the message, right? But when you show it in this way, I think it's helping the audience to easily identify the 3 biggest problems that you want to be addressed, right? You don't want them to focus on the image. You want them to focus on the problem. Okay. Other examples of slides that we worked on that effectively uses imagery. Now, both of these images are for Kelly Clark. It's Dugan. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him, but he's one of the biggest names in terms of legal, right? He's a lawyer in Texas, right? So when you talk about women empowerment, you can use an image of a smiling woman, right? It's empowering. Whereas when you talk about um, the secrets to investing in private placements, you can use an image of a man that is happily or chuckling because he knows the secrets of it, right? Those are another thing is still the uses of imagery. I think Brad already showed this to you before, even this one, but now I just wanted to emphasize that this is actually a template from the internet, so you can see that it's not so flexible in terms of the content of the actual client. So take a look at this. The client actually has these names in his content, and it's no way in the template that you can contain these content. So the bottom line is, don't use templates, please. Okay, it's not gonna hold your content in the most effective way if you use them. And if you will be using them, you still need to do some work around to be able to produce something that is brand consistent and stunning like this one. Yes, they are cheap, but they don't do the work for you. Okay. Next one is effective visualization, still under communication design. So the before, it's just a table, the biggest table, right, with some blurbs. And here, what we did is to visualize it into a chart format so that you can already see that, hey, there's a trend, it's growing, right, without having to look at the percentage here, right? Okay, that's it. I think I've showed a lot of slides. Now let's just go ahead and talk about the last and final elements of a winning pitch deck, right? So it's not actually, it's beyond my control really to put words in the mouth of my clients. At the end of the day, it's their decision, it's their presentation. The only thing that I would advise them is to practice with their team. If they're doing it with the team, then talk amongst yourself which part would be taken by a particular speaker, right? To some of the best clients that I've worked with, and if there's one common denominator that they have, it's the fact that all of them knows what they talk about. Why? Because they they've familiarized their content, right? And so when the Q&A starts, it would be very easy for them to address any questions or anything that would be thrown to them by the audience.
Yep.
So that's it. Those are the three elements of a winning pitch deck. I hope you learned much from this one. I just wanted to invite everybody to visit our newly designed website. It's Kinetic Slide, to know more about how you can make your pitch decks look like $1 million, so that by the time that you step on stage or do a webinar, you would be seen, you'd be perceived with a much more, you'd be perceived as $1 million
Yep.
capital raiser.
That's it.
That's it.
What I want to do is, number one, thank Kevin because he does a phenomenal job. And you saw some examples. But I really want to bring it to life with a real pitch deck client of ours. So let me show you this real quick, and you'll see a dramatic difference here. So what I'm sharing with you here is an actual client of mine. His name is Nitin. Nitin is a big real estate entrepreneur in the Los Angeles area, builds beautiful $3 to $5 million houses. And he sent me his pitch deck. He said, look, I need to have you be honest with me, Brad. I've got my pitch deck and, I'm having conversations with people and I feel like I'm floundering. And I'm like, well, send it over. And so I looked at it and I got it and I sent him literally, I mean, it was like a novel. Here's slide number one. Here's my critique on slide number two. Here's what I would change on slide number three. And so what I want to do, and I've actually got hyperlinks for everybody here, is I want to show you the true before and after. So let me click on this here and it'll actually take you to basically the before. Okay, can everybody see the screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So then as I scrolled through it, it's all black and white. There's not a single picture in his entire pitch deck or presentation. I mean, literally everything is black and white. He's got a picture of himself here. If you can see his picture, that's a little kind of elongated. You know, it's not a perfect picture. Then he goes on here as to the organizational goals, why we're so focused on Silicon Valley. He's got a little bit of an organizational chart in there. And so, you know, I was typing notes, Natine, here's what I would do differently on this slide. Here's what I would do differently on this slide. And he came back to me with a reiteration that was a little bit better. And finally, I just said, you know what? I really need to sit down with this guy and I need to introduce him basically to Kevin. I need to have him work with a professional. And so what we were able to do is put him in contact basically with Kevin. And so basically what Kevin did is he took the same content, meaning he took the same words, the same language, but he did a before and after. And what we came up with was this. So let me share now this. So, you know, as we go through this slide by slide, what you're able to see is literally how Kevin and his team are able to take what was created and really elevate that now to where what you're looking at is $1 million brand. Because basically what you're able to see as you go through this presentation is how Kevin's able to take basically a, what I would call a product that, you know, is rated probably about a 6, maybe a 7 out of 1 to 10. And how now to add a color palette to that same presentation and really elevate it and bring it to a whole nother level. You know, and as you go through this, literally slide by slide, and as you look at it, as it relates to the sponsors, you know, who are we? Now he's got himself. Now he's got his wife. So just understand, and I'll upload this link in the replay in our Facebook group so that all of you that want to look at this before and after as an example, more importantly, of what you can emulate and what you can replicate as it relates to the work you're doing, is this is what you want to be moving towards, not away from, but towards. And so as I posted in the chat, both in the Facebook group and also, of course, here in Zoom, if you've got a pitch deck and you'd like to get feedback, do us a favor, send it to us, info@bradblazer.com. I'll share it with Kevin. We'll take a look at it. And what we'll do is we'll schedule a Zoom where Kevin and I can talk to you briefly about some feedback. Maybe you're using a pitch deck that's not getting you the results that you'd like it to. And so, you know, if you're also interested in having Kevin do the work for you, where you say, here's my logo, here's my picture, here's my headshot, you know, here's what we do. What's your turnaround, Kevin? About what, 10 days to 2 weeks to deliver a completed pitch deck?
7 to 10 days. That doesn't include weekends.
There you go, guys. So, you know, his fees are very, very reasonable. It's well worth it. It's money well spent. Literally, as you can see what he did for Natine, now this guy looks like a multi-million-dollar real estate brand, and he can do it for you. And it doesn't matter whether you're in real estate. I mean, you know, his expertise certainly is across multiple brands as it relates to, you know, what he can do and everything like that. So just realize that, you know, if you're stuck, or better yet, you don't know really even, quote, where to begin, this is what Kevin and his team does for a living. This is all they do. So with that, folks, I'd like to thank everybody for being here for what is day 3. Great day, a lot of information about becoming a person of interest, how to attract investors, most importantly, how to focus on your pitch deck